Nothing contained in this podcast should be considered a substitute for professional medical advice. This content does not represent our respective employers and is purely the opinion of the podcast hosts. We are not your personal medical providers. Sorry, friends. So, if you have any questions or concerns or seeking advice, diagnosis, and or treatment, please seek individual, personalized advice from a healthcare provider in your area. We are not liable for any risks or issues associated with using or acting upon the information contained in this podcast. This is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only, so enjoy the ride. Welcome to Medical Media Mixer, the perfect cocktail. I'm Nicole Peniston, psychologist.
And I'm Tara Prisco, physician assistant.
If you saw my face, it was like all of a sudden my whole screen went blue, like light blue, like sky blue. And I'm like, what is this? No.
I saw your eyes bugging out.
Yeah, literally it came up and it said 1 second. I was like, got this.
Okay.
It was so bizarre.
Death.
It was because I expanded it, and I guess it just like took a minute to expand. Like my desktop must be sky blue, and that's what happened.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you said you have some whole story to tell me. I'm waiting.
Just shenanigans. Oh, are you familiar with the app Whatnot?
No, I am not.
So it's like a bidding app, kind of like eBay, except it's like live in real time, like a very short amount of time.
Okay.
So I stumbled onto Whatnot. I'd heard about it on TikTok for some time. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to download this. Well, actually, technically, my friend Dana, who does listen, she told me about Whatnot. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to download it. So I was looking at like beauty products, like clothes, bedding, like they have everything you can think of there, jewelry. And then I saw someone mention this thing called a Labubu. Are you familiar with a Labubu? No. Well, I now own 3 of them. So a Labubu it's supposed to be a designer purse charm. What it really is a terrifyingly ugly monster plushie that you can then buy outfits for. And the closest thing that I would equate it to, hold on to your panties because you're going to get real excited right now. Do you remember these guys from our childhood?
Oh God,
Monchichis.
Yes. Mochichis, yes.
So this is an actual mochichi that I saw in the store and I had to buy because I was so excited about it. And I felt instantly nostalgic. But they're very similar to that as far as size, and they're like plushy, furry like that, except they have really weird faces. And I actually left mine downstairs. I was going to show it to you, but I have a little plastic one that is probably more disturbing than the regular one. So this is what it looks like.
I saw pictures of these online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are Labubus, and these are the end of the world and the end of my wallet because I have purchased several. I gave one to my mom, so Deb now owns one. I've bought outfits for them. I bought a Starbucks outfit for one, so apparently I'm going to put mine to work, making some fraps. But yeah, that's...
Oh, I've seen a picture of like that exact one, a plush one, but I didn't really know what they were.
Those are Labubus. Apparently they're viral. Like when I got into this like 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, they were going for like more than I thought they should, like $30-$40. As of last night, I was in a chat just watching, just observing, because I'm trying to be good and not buy anymore. They were going for like $110.
Oh my goodness.
These things are insane. It's like Beanie Babies on crack times 1,000.
It's like LuLaRoe. You don't know why you needed it, but you needed it. And you needed that new one, but you don't really know
But that's my theory. It's the same selling process. So like, you know how like LuLaRoe, they would sell it and it was like, okay, we've only got this one pair. And you know, the first person who wants it is going to get it.
Yep.
It's the same sort of like sale urgency with these.
Yes.
And so I gave in to some, but I'm honestly, compared to my friend Dana, I'm sorry, Dana, I love you, but I'm blowing up your spot. She probably owns every single possible one now. She owns a lot of them now. And we said, we're going to get together and have play dates with ours and exchange outfits because what else are we going to do with them?
Hey. I don't know. Are we getting into like the creepy dolls, like your mom's creepy dolls? Or are we going to like...
It's not as creepy, but it's borderline. And when I gave my mom a Lafufu. So apparently there's counterfeit ones that are fake. So I purchased a Lafufu knowing it was a Lafufu. And honestly, the only difference is like it's chunkier, like it's bigger, it's fatter, but it looks the same essentially.
Okay.
So I gave that one to my mom and she is like, Millie's going to love this. For our listeners, Millie is my mom's reborn doll that she has named Millie. So now Millie has a Labubu or a Lafufu.
That's like the stuff of nightmares for a non-child child.
It's a lot for everyone involved, but
I
have no one to blame but myself.
So at work, this is not quite the same, but the dressing up thing, we actually, not this Halloween, the Halloween before, we had this little mini skeleton that we had out, and then we decided to keep him as our mascot, and his name is Bartholomew Bones.
Love that.
And he has different outfits. He has like Easter outfits. He has like a summer surfer outfit. He has like a back to school, like Letterman jacket. He's got a Christmas outfit. Like he's got for all seasons, and he sits at the front of our front desk.
I love that. No, that's like really cute, especially for like a doctor's office.
Right. He's a skeleton. So
it's on brand.
He fits no matter what.
Yeah. Speaking of things we don't need in offices, this one actually I think would be okay. I bought a little baby bonsai tree today, and I kind of have already envisioned him on my desk at work, but then worried about little hands and things happening. So I don't know if I want to bring him to work.
I'm not good at keeping plants alive, but the cleaning lady in my office is amazing at keeping the plants alive. That my father, when he had passed, I had a bajillion plants, and I took some, and they're in my office, and I do nothing, and they stay alive because she does stuff on the weekends. I come in, I'm like, this looks pruned. This looks like maybe she repotted it.
That's
I don't know.
Funny.
But
it's funny you said that, because that's why I got a bonsai tree, because when I was little, my dad always had bonsai trees growing up. So I saw it and I thought of him. So look at that. Our dads have the plant connection.
The plants. I still have fish. I think you saw. I have goldfish still from my father. And there are 3 alive, and one of them, I had 13. This is like 3 years ago. So 3 left. I have no idea how old they were when I got them anyway. But the one has been sick for going on like 9 months, where his air bladder is messed up. So he gets like tired of being able to swim down, and he just gives up and floats belly up, but he's alive.
Same.
So at the end of the day,
sometimes too. Yeah.
He gets tired and he floats, and then he wakes up and he goes down and gets food.
That is the most relatable thing I've heard all day. So
like, I'm tired of living. Let me go float.
I'm tired of doing things. I'm just going to float here for a little while and then get back to life. Yeah.
Oh, when I see you this weekend, I have a present for you.
Ooh, well, I told you I have a present for you from when I went to California. I feel like I had something else for you too, but I don't remember what it was.
This is something I saw the commercial for, and I was like, she just needs this in her life.
Oh my Lord. I mean, I always like laugh when like people are like gift giving and they say to me like, I don't know what to get you. I'm like, I am the easiest person to shop for. I feel like I have a very clear brand, very clear understanding of things that I like or would not like. So I'm like, it's not that hard to shop.
So it depends on what the vibe of this winery is. If everyone's being quiet, maybe we won't break it out there, this gift I'm giving you.
Oh,
but if there's a fun vibe to it.
I feel like I know what it is, and I'm so excited because I've been looking at is it the game with the karaoke?
It's not a game.
Okay.
You'll have to be surprised.
Okay. Well, what I saw, which I do want to buy for myself, but I'm like, who am I going to play it with? It's this card game, and basically you throw it on a card and there's a word on it, and the first person to grab the mic and start a song starting with that word.
Oh.
And you know I would kill that.
Oh, so. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. But I'm like, I can't buy that for myself. Like, it's not that often that I go to like game nights and things like that. So I'm like,
right.
Yeah.
But that is a good sounding one.
It is.
You know a lot of songs.
I do. I know a lot of random songs, and I know every song I know, and this is not an exaggeration, every song that I feel like I know every single lyric and the harmonies and the melodies.
Well, remember, I said there's a drinking game for when I can't think of something. There's definitely a drinking game for this podcast when Nicole just randomly says a song lyric because I said a word.
I could do an entire episode of that. If that's a challenge accepted.
Well, no, the listeners, they need to drink every time that happens.
Oh, okay. Well, for their sobriety and safety, I will try not to do it that much.
So actually, I have a song that every time I'm reading this episode that we're about to do that I want to keep singing. I don't know if you know what the topic of today is.
I did an hour ago.
It's okay.
Look, I got home, I had to cook dinner, I had to find my cocktail that I have to make, then realize I didn't have the Seabreeze. There's so many ocean.
So there's like that old school song, like, let me take you on a sea cruise. Ooh.
Yes. Okay, that would not have been my first choice, but yes.
I have no idea, but it just keeps popping into my head randomly.
Fair. Okay, I get it.
All right, so why don't we jump into what we're talking about today?
Let's do it.
My cocktail is called the Seabreeze. Super simple, like basic bitch cocktail. I like it. It's very like retro, very old school. Like our parents would totally have drank this or probably still do. Now, of course, they did things in mLs, and then I had
I do want to say, I feel like this cocktail is a very, for some reason, and I have nothing to support this idea, I feel like it's a very 70s cocktail. I feel like
it feels that way. Yes.
70s, 80s cocktail.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I could picture like our parents drinking it.
Okay, cool.
It's in mLs. I had Alexa. I don't want to say her name because I don't know if there's one close by that's going to hear me.
It's okay.
Convert it into ounces for me because I was like, how many mLs is in this many ounces?
Wait, you don't have the little glass that has it all?
Oh, I do have one of those big glasses, but I was just using a shot glass. Well, anyway, so it's 50 mLs of vodka, which is about like 1 3/4 ounce, 150 mLs of cranberry juice, and 50 mLs of grapefruit juice. Throw them in a glass over ice. The end. Tasty, retro. I'm feeling it.
And the only warning is you can't drink grapefruit juice with certain meds. Otherwise, go to
correct. It. Yes. And this is a very tiny amount, so hopefully it's not enough that, it would cost too much. But yes, it is.
Well, you shouldn't be drinking and taking meds at the same time anyway.
Yes.
Public service announcement.
Yes. I did link on the show notes that we'll throw in there a mocktail version. I'm going to try and offer that when I can.
Nice. Are you telling me that's what I need to be doing moving forward?
You don't have to. You could do whatever you want. But I just felt like, I'll throw a little mocktail in there too. Whatever.
Well, there is because I'm planning episodes far ahead. As you can see, I updated the docs. There is a particular one that I did not find a cocktail for, but I found a non-alcoholic beverage that is on theme. So I may do that in the future and then just tell people, if you want to add alcohol, just add any clear liquor to this.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah. I mean, it's just something I thought of today. So it's not something that we're deciding for the podcast future, but just to throw some in if we can find them. So I'm covering the whole basically show, Dr. Odyssey. Mm-hmm. So
the answer is no, I have not watched it.
You have not. So it's one season. It has not been canceled, but it has not been renewed. So I'm pretty sure that means it's being canceled.
But didn't it come out like not that long ago where there's still like time?
Yeah, it's ABC, it's Hulu. They're not on the fall schedule. And, it's regular network TV where everything starts in September and, So I don't know, but it was cute. It was fun. I think the problem is some of these regular, like old formula network TV shows don't survive as well as now where you can go and like binge a whole, in-depth
So that was going to be my question. Did they only release one episode at a time?
I'm not sure because I watched it all after it was already out, I guess. 16 or 18 episodes, I believe. And I actually just finished some today while I was charting at work. Because even though it has nothing to do per se, the whole thing, I didn't have to watch everything to cover it for the show. I figured, let me do my due diligence. I already got into these characters a little. So basically the premise of the show is that it is a very hoity-toity cruise ship. And the new doctor on board is Dr. Max Bankman, played by Joshua Jackson.
Pacey.
Yes. So
I never watched Dawson's.
Right. So I know we said on previous episodes that you weren't a Dawson's girl, right?
But I am a fan of Joshua Jackson. I've actually seen several things he's been in. Something he was in recently, probably right before the show, Dr. Death. He did a phenomenal job.
Oh, yes. I did see Dr. Death. And he was on Fringe. That was like his big thing later. That seems like up your alley, no? Paranormal?
I didn't see that. I know I've seen him in multiple things, though. So, I have positive feelings about him. I just wasn't, on board with Pacey. And from what I've seen, it feels like Pacey was kind of a little whiny bit.
Well, no. So, here's the thing. If you were a Pacey or a Dawson girl, Dawson was more of a little whiny bitch. Pacey was the bad guy.
Well, I do
Pacey
remember
was
the Dawson
the little bit rough around the edges sort of thing. And so he was the sexier one because he was the bad boy,
I'll take your word for it. I mean, I feel like that ship has sailed for me. So.
Yeah, I mean, yes, they were high school boys. So, yes, we are no longer in that space. But so, yes, Dr. Max Bankman, played by Joshua Jackson. He's newly hired. There's a nurse practitioner, Avery Morgan. Then there is another male nurse, Tristan. And then there's the captain, who's played by Don Johnson.
Yes, I knew that.
And
Don can still get it. Okay.
He's good looking. He is a handsome guy. I was like, I don't know. He was a thing for, again, our parents' generation. Yeah. He's a good looking guy. And his character was cute because he was a leader, but brought a little bit of lightheartedness to things. So it was cute.
He's aged very well, so he's doing good.
He really has, and he doesn't look like he's had like work done. He's just like aged
just good
nicely.
genes. Yeah.
So the interesting thing about this whole series is that to keep it interesting, I guess it can't be just like Carnival Royal Caribbean where every day is the same, and every time you go out in the ship it's the same.
I've never been on a cruise, so I don't know.
Never?
No.
Oh, Nicole.
I kind of want to go on one for my birthday, but TBD.
Okay. All right. You should do it. This one, to make it interesting, because it's like this hoity-toity one, every week is like a theme of the type of guests that come aboard.
Oh.
So that mixes it up and causes more interesting things to happen based on the type of crowd. And I'll go into a little bit of that. But basically, this show, the medicine is realistic in some ways. Like the diagnoses they come up with are real. Some of the tests and procedures they do are real. But I mean, it is certainly dramatized for TV because it's TV, it's entertainment. Everything is like decorated in the medical bay. Like even their syringes have like gold chrome. They pull them up. Like their bottles of medicines aren't in like normal medicine packages. They're all in these pretty beautiful canisters. Everything's very like aesthetic, I guess we would call it.
Why? All that stuff is just going into the biohazard trash anyway.
Because it's a fancy boat with fancy doctors and fancy equipment. I mean, and they do things like CAT scans, which we'll get into is not something typically offered on a cruise ship. He's right out there doing surgery on people, which you definitely don't do.
I'm just thinking like most cruise ships, even the super luxe ones, don't necessarily have the capacity for that. And for the wow, I'm blanking on the word, when everything is like appropriate for sterilization for that, like there's a lot of issues.
Yeah. And you'll see that some of the things that they handle, like a normal cruise ship should be like an urgent care ER, right? It's like treat and street. Like we take care of what's emergent. If they need to be transferred off ship, we do that. Something we can handle here and get them back to their normal day, we do that.
You may have already said this. Where are they sailing to?
It's all different locations. Okay. And they don't really, the locations aren't a huge part of it. Like, you'll see them on a beach somewhere on occasion, know, in the very last 2 episodes, there's a earthquake and tsunami and they're in Mexico. So
nice. Tsunami when you're on a cruise ship. It's perfection. Yeah.
Yes. I told you. But the other thing is they treat more long-term conditions. Like we're going to get to the root of the problem here that nobody figured out when you like that when you were on land, nobody figured it out. We're going to figure it out.
I'm going to get my serious medical condition figured out on vacation.
Right?
No.
So, of course, along the backstory, there's a love triangle between the doctor, the nurse practitioner, and the nurse. And
wait, a three-way?
There is a fade to black 3-way.
Wow. Okay.
There's it fades black though. You just see like the first beginning of
Joshy. Okay, good for you. I mean, off topic, but his ex-wife, Jodie Turner, oh my God, she's gorgeous. Gorgeous. I know they're no longer together, but wow, he really hit the jackpot on her. Okay, enough.
So just a couple like random things to give you an idea of the kind of people that come on. So they had singles week. So singles week, of course, has STIs, heart attack during a speed dating event.
It's not speeding like that.
They have plastic surgery week where the boat is owned by a plastic surgeon, I guess, or somebody who also owns a plastic surgery group. So everyone does their plastic surgery, then comes in the boat to recover.
Okay,
so
I thought you meant they were doing it on the boat.
No, but all the complications of, this wound is here, or this happened, or whatever. Shark Week, which is not the theme of the boat.
There's sharks on the boat?
No, but they do get attacked by orcas, actually. First, someone gets bit by a shark, and then they realize the reason the shark is freaking out is because it's being chased by orcas, and then orcas surround the ship and literally like are butting the hull of the ship.
They can be really aggressive in a
like
pod.
The power to go out and like all kinds of crazy stuff that happen.
Yeah, I watched Blackfish. I know all about orca.
Yeah. Some other things that they have. Let's see.
I think it would have been better if it was Shark Week and all the sharks got to come on board and talk about humans. That would have been fun.
Yeah, they have times where let me find where it was, like an outbreak of some sort of infectious illness, which
Legionnaires.
we would expect. Yeah, well, yes, that's something we could expect. Absolutely. And, they had 1 week where it was like 2 groups. It was like the last 2 episodes where 2 groups accidentally got booked on the same time. And one was a super conservative wives one, and the other group was like a sex forward group. So of course. The clashes of that.
Speaking of cruises, did you watch on Netflix Trainwreck, the poop cruise?
No.
It's about some crews that got stranded, and basically part of it was people started having to poop in biohazard bags because all the plumbing got backed up.
Oh, yeah. That sounds really absolutely like nightmares.
Yeah.
But like I said, the show in general it's fun, it's light enough, it's not that serious, it's interesting.
I think surgery on a ship is pretty serious. Okay.
Yeah, but there's a lot of like the personal dramas and all that stuff. So it was interesting. So I was like, I had never been to medical facilities. I've been on quite a few cruises. I have to count them in my head, but
I think the goal is not to visit the medical facilities on a cruise.
Right. So I've been to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 7, maybe more. Notably, I've been to Alaska on a cruise, and I've been to Cuba on a cruise when you were allowed to go.
I'm jealous.
Those are like cool places. Everywhere else was kind of like normal. So on the last cruise I was on, though, which was just this past November, on the last day, we happened to ask someone for directions of where we were getting off the ship, and it was the ship's doctor. So we spent a few minutes chatting with him. So it was interesting to hear, I was like, oh, I'm in medicine, and he told us about how he works in Texas, and he, comes on the ship for this many months, and, what his background is. And he's, an ER physician. Of course he has to have some experience in trauma and things like that. And he says, certain cruise lines, hire different things. Sometimes they're hired by the cruise line. Sometimes it's an outside company. And it was just interesting, like kind of picking his brain on, things about the ship. So that's the only encounter I've had with anyone medical, knock on wood, on a cruise ship.
That's kind of cool. I've only from watching like Below Deck, which is an amazing show.
That's a good one.
But it feels like, at least from that show, but I've heard from other people like who personally have worked on cruise ships, it's a very unusual type of subculture of folks who work on cruise ships and work in that type of hospitality. So I wonder if like the medical doctor needs to be of a different kind of personality as well to work in that setting.
Yeah, you have to, it is different than land medicine. They're going to encounter things that you're not going to encounter. And you do see that in this show. I did like that part where, this person got the bends because they went, scuba diving. This person got iodine poisoning because they ate so many shrimp at the...
Wait, hold up. Somebody got the bends. So you're telling me they have a hyperbaric chamber on the ship
to
put someone in?
Of course they did. This is fancy.
Bullshit. No.
But like somebody ate too many shrimp and got iodine poisoning at the buffet.
That makes sense.
But just certain things like that maybe you wouldn't have encountered in land medicine. And they also have to run to a person's room or they fall on deck. There was this whole scene where it was cheerleading week, and a girl, they had cracked, I guess, the filter by accident in the bottom of the hot tub, and then her hair got sucked in. Yeah, and they had like cut her hair, and there was like a shard of
gotten scalped. Oh my god!
And there was a shard of plastic near her carotid, and a whole thing. So again, things you're not going to encounter on normal
medical things that sound terrible. Most of the ones that like stick with me, and I am not fazed by much, they always involve filters in pools or hot tubs, or somebody getting sucked in and then getting terrible things are happening.
Yeah, it is.
Stay out of the water, folks.
There's sharks. There's orcas. There's
sharks.
Tsunamis.
There's sharks and orcas in the ocean and in the pool. At the very least, there's pee. So
anyway, it was a cute show. So if you kind of just hanging out and you want to casually watch it, it's fun. But what I wanted to cover more was just what do they offer? Like, what are the regulations? What's available on cruise ships? What kind of things do they treat? So that's kind of more what I'm focusing on versus one specific diagnosis that they covered.
And you're probably going to cover this, but I would imagine there's probably different laws or regulations depending on if they're in international waters or...
Right. So, well, that's what's interesting. Yeah, there are some some organizations that I found guidelines from. But yeah, these are all international. So I guess it's an international organization that comes up with it, just like anything. And then the cruise lines maybe voluntarily are part of that. But there wasn't, state to state, country to country. It would be too confusing. So I think it is more of an international just organization that has oversight. So
the only thing I know about that is you can legally get married by a ship captain when you're in international waters.
Yes. They did a group wedding one. That was one of their last episodes as well. It was a group mass wedding. So
interesting.
See, you're covering everything.
I'm hitting them all, even though I've never seen this show.
So yeah, the regulatory oversight. So it's something called ACEP, and basically the guidelines, there are minimum requirements for cruise ships that carry over 100 passengers. So it doesn't have to be very big. I mean, some of these now carry 6,000-7,000.
Yeah.
They must provide urgent and emergency care, and that is not a substitute for land-based hospitals, and they must support resuscitation, cardiac care, trauma stabilization, and minor surgery. Not this guy was doing like wide open, like crazy vascular things. They are required to carry defibrillators, ventilators, EKG machines, lab testing for basic things. So, your CBC, your blood count, your basic cardiac markers, your electrolytes. They were doing extensive, crazy testing on this show that I was like, I couldn't get that in the regular world, let alone on a cruise ship.
Right. And why would you want to? Well, I'm thinking the other side of it is like a patient would have to consent to this stuff. Like, I don't know if I would necessarily want that on a cruise ship.
And it costs money on a cruise ship. I mean, if you have insurance, like you get travel insurance, I guess you can claim it, but it costs money. So then there's something called CLIA, which is the Cruise Lines International Association. So what that does is that mandates adherence to those ACEP guidelines for all member lines. So if you're a cruise line and you want to be part of this CLIA, then you have to follow these ACEP guidelines. So that seems like how it's like a self-oversight. And the big thing that they encourage is, of course, infectious disease prevention plans, training, inspections, things like that. Staff-wise, they usually have 1 to 2 physicians, and one of them has to have at least ER or ICU background, and 2 to 4 registered nurses that are experienced in acute and emergency care. So in this show, the other thing too was it was interesting because they're not full-time just hanging out down in the medical bay. Like, they're all around the ship. They get dressed up for the formal nights. There was a night where the night of the threesome, they're all 3 drinking. I'm like, who's running this show?
Yeah.
Like, what happens if something happens?
Who's the sober companion here?
Larger vessels over 3,000 passengers often include medical directors, advanced diagnostic tools, so have a little bit more. So 3,000 seems to be, a moderate sized cruise ship, small to moderate nowadays. So equipment they may have, like we said, EKG, defibrillators, medications. So they're going to carry acute medications. They're going to carry some antibiotics for sure, some blood pressure medicines, things like that they can use, quickly if they need to. And just minor things like an urgent care would have, like laceration repair, stitches, abscess drainage, things like that. And then they do have basic x-rays on larger ships, which fine. Like, we got to see if this is a broken bone. That's simple enough. Most people can, even in ER and urgent care, the provider reads the initial read on the x-ray, and then it gets overread by a radiologist remotely. They can do the same thing here. The images can be sent to somebody who's sitting behind their computer on shore and double check what they're reading. So that makes sense. That's simple enough. And it does also mention the isolation rooms with negative pressure for infectious disease. So there are certain highly contagious respiratory things that you have to have a negative pressure room. So right. I guess they have to have.
I'm just thinking, like, where do they have the space and the time for this?
It's usually in the basement on a cruise ship.
That's exactly where someone wants to be on a cruise ship.
Mm-hmm.
You're sick, you don't feel well, go to the basement.
Well, all the pretty areas with the views are up top.
That's true.
So common things that are treated at sea. The big one we know is norovirus. I mean, a lot of cruise ships got a lot of bad names for a lot of GI virus outbreaks. So they all now have, like, as you walk into the buffet, at first they used to have just hand sanitizers, but now some of the newer ships will have little sink hand washing stations along. Like the Disney cruise that we went on was a newer ship. And every time you walked into that buffet, you had to wash your hands. Like, they were literally watching you, making sure you did it.
I mean, better safe than sorry.
And when you walk into just the regular sit down restaurants, there was hand sanitizer they would, or a wipe they would give you. Because that in a confined area can spread like wildfire. Any touch point, you could touch the elevator button, you could touch, anything in what they call, I love this word, a fomite. Ugh. Fomite is anything like a physical object that can carry a virus, bacteria, whatever.
So it's like a big old piece of poop, just
poop hands. You touched this and you touched that, and grossness. But that can get out of hand and spread, and then you worry about patients with dehydration, people who may be older and sicker. The whole stereotype of older people liking cruises is kind of true. So
it makes sense if you're thinking of the logistics of it. Cruises are not cheap. And then when you're older, now you don't have young kids to take care of. You don't have to bring them on the cruise with you. So now you're finally at a place financially and independence-wise that you can go on cruise. You can go live your best life.
Well, there are people who will live. Have you heard of this? All year round?
Yes, because it's cheaper than living in like a retirement community. I've heard of people living on cruises, living in hotels, because it's cheaper. Yeah.
Right. And honestly, because you can be part of their points club or whatever, and you get like upgrades, and over time you're actually probably saving money. All your meals are included. Yeah. I mean, you can't beat that.
Yeah. If you can manage it and you like being on a ship, it's probably one of the more affordable options.
Yeah. When we went to Alaska, we were in our early 30s, and we were the youngest people on the ship by like 30 plus years. Wow. Because Alaska, I guess, isn't a destination for younger people. And we went on Princess Cruise Line, which is known to be an older person cruise line, but it's one of the few that goes into that inner passage area where the glaciers are. And so that's why we picked that. But yeah, I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to do CPR on this cruise.
That's why... No. If I do go on a cruise for my birthday, you need to educate me, because I don't know about this is this type of cruise, and these are these type of people, and this is that.
Yeah.
Cruise culture is a whole thing that I know nothing about.
So other things infectious wise, we know COVID, that was a huge thing when that first happened. They wouldn't let everybody off the boats because they all were stuck sort of quarantined out in the harbor. Things, again, can spread like wildfire, influenza, RSV, things like that. And then, like you mentioned, Legionnaires, right, which comes from any kind of a water air conditioning systems that can be linked to. And then I guess depending on where you're traveling to, you could come across something like malaria or dengue if you're in some place that might be endemic to.
Wait, what was that? Malaria or what?
Dengue.
I thought you said Bengay. I was like, yes. Like icy hot?
Well, you definitely need that for all the walking you're doing.
That's true.
And then, non-infectious things, the probably most common thing they see is motion sickness, right?
Makes sense.
So they can give them some of those scopolamine patch, which is what you put behind the ear. That's a prescription, some oral, anti-nausea or anti-motion sickness medications. Sprains, fractures, falls, hitting their head, ships moving, slippery decks, crowds of people. It just sounds like, someone's going to break a leg at some point. It's going to happen. Someone's going to cut themselves. So suturing, casting, handling things like that.
Right. Non-fatal situations.
Well, it absolutely happens. Absolutely does happen. So that comes kind of into the next thing, flare-ups of chronic diseases. So if you have hypertension, diabetes, COPD, that an event could happen related to that while you're there. And that tends to be, of course, a more serious situation. And then, of course, mental health issues, right? So, you're in a crowd, there's a lot of people, it's unfamiliar, food, alcohol.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I feel like we hear often enough about people getting into fights on cruise ships, or people pushing someone overboard, or someone jumping overboard because they're having some sort of mental crisis. So yeah, I guess it's important to have folks there, but we hear the news about the people who didn't have someone there supporting them.
I know. Some things that they have to take into account are like evacuation protocols and emergency care. So the medical centers are open 24/7, and they typically have these rapid response teams that can go out to these public areas. Like I said, might have to take care of something up on deck, and they can do those things like airway management. If you had to intubate somebody, defibrillate, full on CPR. And I guess now in the time of telemedicine, you could consult with a specialist. If you can't get them back to land, you can do a telemedicine consult with a specialist for advice on what to do with them. So that's something to think about. Like, you're no longer isolated being a provider out there in the middle of nowhere. You do have access. to other people. And then, we have to think about there are times where they cannot handle it on ship, right? And the patient needs to be evacuated. So there's a couple different, ways that could happen. Sometimes they can make it to the next port. Sometimes they can't. So if it's a heart attack, a stroke, major trauma, something that needs a CAT scan or an MRI, or like we said, psychiatric emergencies with harm or self-injury, they might use a helicopter if they have to. They might use a tender boat to get them to maybe a smaller ship or smaller boat that takes them into port, or like we said, wait to the next port. They often have to coordinate with the Coast Guard, local to wherever they are, local EMS, the hospital that's going to receive the patient. And, the patient has to be stable enough to put them in said vehicle and get them off the ship. So that's interesting. That is very different than medicine anywhere else. There's one thing to maybe lift somebody from a emergency scene and get them to the hospital, but now you go from this medical to another medical facility on a boat. You have to take them off of a boat. So appropriate offload. So basically they say that challenges arise when passengers can exaggerate their symptoms to leave early. That seems a little weird. I don't know. I think more people no, I'm fine. I don't want to leave. I spent all this money, and downplay their symptoms.
I think it depends on the context. The first thing I thought is so if someone's having a panic attack, they're like, I need to get out of here. I can't be here. Yeah,
I guess so. That makes sense. Yeah. They say there's ethical issues balancing the individual rights with the resource management, passenger flow. You have to kind of take everything into account. And the cruise lines have to work with port authorities and sometimes deny disembarkation if unjustified. You can't just drop somebody on a random island. There has to be paper trail and things. Right. So you can't just let them off the ship. So things for us, if you want to go on a cruise, to think about before you go.
Okay.
Pre-travel, maybe have a visit with your provider, especially if heart or lung conditions, immunosuppression. If you're pregnant, there are rules about how late you can travel. I believe you can't travel in your third trimester. And a lot of cruise lines will not accept also a child under a year old to go on the cruise ship as well. Vaccinations, most do not require any vaccinations. I think with COVID, there was a brief time where they did. But if some of your destinations might have malaria, yellow fever, things like that, you might need some either vaccinations or pre-medications before you go. And like I mentioned earlier, travel insurance, because cash paying for anything that happens can get really expensive. Bring all of your medications with you in their original containers. Try not to put them in a little pill case, and keep them in your carry-on that you take on the plane, that you walk on the ship with, because your big luggage goes under. Keep them in your carry-on.
Same thing that if you were flying, you want to have that stuff accessible.
Exactly. While you're on board, hand hygiene, like we said, the washy. So that's what they tell you when you go to the thing, washy. So make sure you washy. Stay hydrated. Don't drink too much, because that'll dehydrate you. And if you need to use something for seasickness, use it before you're seasick, because it's a lot harder to recover. And basically just the industry trends, they're using telemedicine quite a bit more. They're using some AI diagnostics. So a remote symptom checker, I guess, computer-based thing to, risk stratify you. And they're using some health screenings, contactless thermometers, rapid testing, quarantine areas. So it's interesting. It's a different type of medicine. So I thought it was fun the way they portrayed it. It did touch on some of the real stuff, but there's a little extra drama and spice thrown in. And
of course.
It was cute. And Don Johnson was adorable. And I think he's a nice looking old man.
Yeah, he's done well for himself over his career.
Who was he married? He was married to
Melanie Griffin.
Melanie Griffin. So there's a story actually.
And Dakota Johnson is his daughter.
I did not realize that.
Yes,
that makes complete sense.
Makes sense. Same last name.
Well, Johnson's a kind of common
but
name.
No, that's his daughter.
But there's a story that my mother was driving down, and we were having a cheerleading competition in Williamsburg, Virginia, but they stopped in DC on the way down, and they went to a Planet Hollywood or a Hard Rock Cafe. I think a Planet Hollywood. And they had to have lunch. My sister was there, my mom and her friend Mary, and I guess my sister and some whoever else. And they heard from the waitstaff, or somebody told them that Melanie Griffith and Don Johnson were going to be there. But they had to wait around for when it was going to happen. So they're trying to stretch their meal out, stretch their drinks out. And the kids are like, who are we waiting for? Like, who is this? Like, they didn't, care, the little kids. I was on the bus with the cheerleaders, so I wasn't there, but they did stay and they did meet them, and I believe they got their autographs. So,
nice. Well, and let's just take a moment to, praise Melanie and her good choice in men, because she went from John Dawson to Antonio Banderas. So, girl knows how to pick them.
That's true.
Yeah, good for her.
She's got something.
Yes.
So yeah, that was a fun one. We have a lot coming up. I think we've both been sort of working behind the scenes to get some stuff ready. We'll see each other this weekend for one of our adventures that will be podcast related.
Yeah.
And we have some partnerships coming up. So there is confirmation that I will be appearing on a podcast for medical professionals with burnout, and I'll be interviewed and promoting our podcast, of course.
Nobody loves me.
You got to go make friends with other psychologists. I randomly cold emailed people. I cold email. I would search for all PAs who have podcasts, basically, and cold reached out to them. And then we have another PA that will be featured on our podcast.
Yes.
So I'm really excited for that. We'll definitely plug everything. And we have a bartender who's diligently working on a cocktail for an episode. So we're reaching out, making a little partnerships and friends. So
awesome. Yep, we're doing great. So make sure that you follow us on all of our socials. We are on Pinterest, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And that's it. And then you can send us an email to medicalmediamixer@gmail.com and send us feedback. Apparently, lots of people are responding to some recent social media discussions.
Yes, our cannibalism talk.
Apparently, we're being judged hard.
People say, go check that girl's freezer.
You can check my freezer. There's a lot of frozen beets in there, some mozzarella sticks. That's about it.
Oh my goodness. Hey, if it gets the word out there, maybe someone's curious and they'll listen.
Or maybe someone will finally answer the question, what does it taste like?
Yes, I'm waiting to hear. Email us if you've tasted human flesh.
You can remain anonymous. It's fine.
All right. So thank you for listening to Medical Media Mixer.
The perfect cocktail. Cheers.
Cheers.
My drink looks gray, but it's not gray.
It does look gray.